Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for coming today to hear a little bit about our DC legislative seminars. So, I'm going to start by letting you know what our mission is, because I imagine you want to know what our goals and priorities and what we value is. So, our mission at the Institute for Civility is to reduce polarization by facilitating dialogue, teaching respect, and building civility in public and private spaces. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with 28 years of history in the civility realm. So, my goal for this presentation today is very simple. I just want to make sure that you walk away with enough information to move forward with the DC legislative seminar for your group. And so we're going to start by talking about what exactly civility is, because we're the Institute for Civility. So you want to know what we define that as. The Institute defines civility as claiming and caring for one's identity, needs, and beliefs without degrading someone else's in the process. So it's more than just basic politeness. Older ideas focused on manners and polite behavior rather than real understanding or dialogue. And that leads to people misunderstanding how to deal with their differences in constructive ways. So the key idea is to be true to yourself and true to others. Civility is not fake politeness that hides real feelings, which can result in resentment and not make your true intentions clear. And finally, civility should never be used to silence or oppress or disregard arguments due to how they were said or avoid accountability or hide uncomfortable truths. So these are some of the civility skills that we work to teach students and to present, and these are some of our values that we strongly hold. All right, so on to what we're here to talk about, our student legislative seminars. Who can go? First of all, any interested group can go. We have taken adult groups, we have taken Boy Scout groups or Scout groups. Usually it needs to be a small group, a maximum of 15 people, and two chaperones. If we're taking a group of adults or college students, chaperones are not needed. The minimum group size is 10 students, but we really encourage you to plan for at least 3 backups. Things change at the last minute and people drop out, and then it makes things complicated. So it's good to have someone else ready to fill their shoes. The school chooses who attends. So it is 100% up to the school to determine who goes and why they go. That is up to the school. And what is it? It's a DC trip. It's fully customizable and it's 5 or 6 days long. So it's basically we leave the best trip schedule, we leave on a Saturday and we return on a Thursday, leaving like Thursday morning. Dates are flexible. So we work with you to figure out what dates make sense and when that's going to work for you and your group, of course. Where do we go? Okay, so this is just a quick list of some of the places we go because I want you to understand that we go everywhere. And this is not everything, but this is just a overview. We'll have lots of pictures coming up soon, so I don't need to get into reading this for you, but I know people learn in different ways. we hit, we end up going to the important places that people value. What's the best part? We pursue grant funding alongside the group to make this accessible for all students. So, who funds these trips? We will have different foundations that will fund these sorts of trips. Um, Usually, it's a local foundation who wants to support the students in their area. We have had Rotary clubs support trips, Kiwanis clubs, and our members finally support the trip. So, what's the cost? $2,500 per person, but generally speaking, that is paid for by the foundation or by a grant. We often have students pay a nominal fee, like $100 or $200, just to have some skin in the game so that they have a vested interest in the trip themselves. But that is also something that we work with the school to determine what an appropriate amount for their students is, because some schools think $100 is good, some schools say their students can afford 200. It really is up to you guys and what you think is best. Okay, so what is different about our DC legislative seminars versus other DC trips? We visit all the typical museums and monuments and much, much more. But what's different is our process. Students start with an orientation, which you see an image up here of one of our co-founders at Palacios High School during an orientation meeting. During that meeting, the students will collectively choose 3 topics. After that, once we're in DC, students receive briefings from experts. Then we work with the students to craft a civil, respectful statement. And after that statement is designed, and after they've practiced it and they know what they're going to say and they've got it all written down, those students present the statement to their reps and Senate staff members. Okay, so here are just a few topics that were chosen in 2026. This year, students chose topics like ICE and their treatment of immigrants, Border Patrol, equal pay for women, healthcare costs, inflation, the Epstein files, underfunded schools. So these are all topics that we've covered this year, that we received briefings on, and that students were feeling passionate about. No subject is off topic. If the students collectively choose that topic, then that's the topic that we're going to research with them. And here are a couple of images from DC of students receiving briefings. These were this year, and they get briefings from groups such as the Bipartisan Policy Center and other organizations that are going to present a nonpartisan perspective. We want students to understand both sides of their issue and the idea. We don't want a slanted view. We want them to make up their minds for themselves, and we want to make sure that they have all the information from both sides of the story so that they can formulate a well-educated opinion. Okay, and here are some short clips from our briefings in DC from this year. Oh, I'm sorry, the sound isn't good. I'm not sure if you guys could hear that. I apologize. I'm going to try this next one. I apologize. I'm going to have to figure out how to make those a little bit louder. Okay, and here are students working on crafting their statements. So we get to work right away on crafting those statements. They work through what they know about the topic. They choose groups. So students have the opportunity to choose any one of the topics that they received a briefing on. And sometimes it happens that, you know, 10 people want this topic and one person wants this topic, and then the third topic gets dropped. All of that is an option. We don't tell them what direction to go, what group to be a part of. The groups don't need to be balanced. It's simply them following what they're passionate about and what they want to dive deeper into. We've got about 2 evenings to craft these statements, and these are pictures of us working at Shalom Place. I will get into that location later. Shalom Place is sort of a rooming house that we have privately just to ourselves to stay at, which helps us keep costs down. The statements are brief, just 3 minutes long. We practice presenting them repeatedly. We do not ask the students to memorize their statements. We specifically encourage them to not bother trying because the goal is improving their presentation skills, not memorization skills. So we work with them and try to express to them exactly what their statement needs to sound like. We explain to them how they should intonate, what words are acceptable. We might help them if they have a word that might be offensive to the representatives. We might encourage them to change that. And so it becomes a beautifully crafted piece of work. And here's what a final product of that looks like. Okay, and again, I apologize for the sound. I'm going to have to figure out how to make that a little louder next time and work on getting a transcript so you can at least read it. I apologize for that. But here are some images of students presenting their statements. These are students with their representative, Randy Weber. On the right and left, you can see we try to explain to the students that, sometimes you might have the opportunity to sit down at a nice boardroom table and have a longer discussion. Other times our representatives have very, very tight schedules and they might only have 5 minutes to get a briefing on a topic. So we explain to the students too that this isn't just the experience that this representative has with the students. Representatives are so busy that sometimes they pop out of one meeting and are on their way to the next meeting, and all they have is 5 minutes to hear what they should be voting on and what the topic is and some background on that information. And so we explain to them that these statements that they're crafting are very much like some of the presentations that these representatives are getting between meetings. In this middle picture, here is a group of students at Senator Cruz's office, and you see the backs of the heads of 2 Senate staffers to whom they are presenting their statements. And so we've got the students all lined up in order to say their part of their statement, and they go through it. And then, when there is time and when time allows for it, they get feedback from the staffers on those topics. The staffers politely take notes and take information from them. And we try to explain like that, this is just the beginning. This is planting a seed, and things aren't going to change instantly. And civic engagement takes time and persistence and more communication. So this is just their first step into this world. And here are some students with a staffer on the left here. You see that here's the staffer and the group of students that presented to him over at Senator Cornyn's office. And on the right here, you can see the students shaking hands with Representative Weber. The representatives and senators are so kind and generous. They so badly want to spend time with the students and talk more with them. And you can often see their staffers in the background going, okay, we got to get out of here, and trying to encourage them to wrap up their conversations. But it's never the students that are holding on to them. It's the representatives and the senators who just want to connect with their constituents. It's really encouraging. Okay, so here's a summary slide of what the big differences are between this trip and another similar type trip, right? Other groups might go to DC, but what's unique about our trips is the small group size, the students choosing the topics that they're passionate about, the briefings they get from experts, the crafting of these statements, and then learning how to present and get the courage to present to Congress people and Senate staffers. Students use public transit throughout the city, which is an incredible opportunity for them, especially if they're coming from places without public transit, because they learn a whole new way to navigate a city without a vehicle. And then finally, this trip is life-changing for students. They come away with a whole new perspective. And it's not just life-changing for the students, okay? It is often life-changing for the teachers and the chaperones who are on the trip as well. We have had some chaperones who said, I never voted before this trip. Since I went on this trip, now I vote. These are huge changes in people's lives. And they walk away, the students come away with this confidence and this independence and stronger civic responsibility. Okay. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit of the schedule. You guys can take a peek at this. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but I just want to show you what the schedule looks like so that you can get an idea of how long these days are and how much we cram in to this experience. So day one is typically Arlington Cemetery. Day two, we go to the National Cathedral very frequently. We'll spend a day with time at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And then the other portion of the day is at the Holocaust Museum. It can be a really heavy day. Recently, we added in the National Air and Space Museum, which typically we do on Museum Day. So this day is not really Museum Day. This is really just for the National Museum of African American History and Culture and the Holocaust Museum. But if time permits, we'll try to fit in other activities as well. Then day three. This is our briefing day. So we end up going down to Capitol Hill. Students dress up like you see the students here, and they receive those briefings on the topics that they have chosen. So you see we've got briefings back to back for a few hours, and then they get their tour of Capitol Hill. We go and we check out the Senate chambers and the congressional chambers. where the work is done. We get to see those spaces. We go up top and we're in the gallery. So if something is going on, if someone is presenting, then we get to hear what they're presenting. That doesn't always happen, but it's quite a treat when it does. I actually got to hear one of my senators speaking on the Senate floor, and it was very exciting because he is retiring. So I live in Illinois, and so my senator, it was Senator Dick Durbin who was speaking that day. All right, day four. Day four is going to be a museum day. And in the evening on day three, we're working on those statements back at Shalom Place. We're trying to get those statements ironed out, make sure that we've got the right words after we've had our briefings. And so then on day four, it's our museum day. Students get to choose from all of these museums that are listed and more. A lot of people want to go see the Air and Space Museum. So if we didn't fit that in a couple days ago, we will fit that in on this day. There's only a couple of different museums that require timed entry, and the Air and Space Museum is one of those. So we get those tickets. We'll plan to go to that museum, collectively. And then we kind of will split off into small groups. Depending on how many chaperones we have and depending on the rules of the school, we will split off into smaller groups and try and make sure that students get to go to every museum that they want to get to in the same day, which I'm always up for going to like all of them. So I will go to like 4 or 5 museums in one day, and it's just a blast. Last time we got to see the Museum of African Art and the Museum of Asian Art. We got lost in them. They had gardens outside. They were just incredible. Actually, I think a couple students got lost in them and we had to go retrieve them and try to help them get back out. We were communicating with them by phone and they're like, whoa, we don't even know where we are. So, but it was absolutely an incredible experience and all was well. Sorry, I didn't mean to like make that sound like a dangerous experience, but it was thrilling because the spaces are so inspiring. We fit in the National Archives that afternoon, which is another timed entry required thing. And in this image, you see the students here at Ford's Theater. That's why they're doing thumbs down sign, because this is where President Lincoln was shot. So they were all doing thumbs up, and then they're like, oh no, it's a sad place. So they did thumbs down instead. But so we fit in that last minute trip to Ford's Theater. And then we had dinner at the Kennedy Center, which was a great experience to get to see that space. And they're working on remodeling it. So any opportunity that we can go to the Kennedy Center, we try to get there and make sure that students get to see it before it's remodeled, as well as if the opportunity exists based on our timeline and our schedule. If we can see a free show at the Kennedy Center, we will absolutely prioritize that and make it happen. Okay. Day 5. You can see by day 5, people are exhausted. See students sleeping here on all the types of transit, right? We've got on the right bottom corner, you see students sleeping on the bus. On the left corner, you see students sleeping on the train. These are different sleeping times. So it's exhausting. These are long days. We take lots of steps. And then up here on the right-hand corner, this is the priority of the day. Okay, on the right-hand corner, this is students speaking with a different representative staffer. And you can see her, here, I'll use my arrow. Here she is, here's the staffer. Here's a teacher, and the students are presenting their statement to the staffer. And so we usually have about 3 different appointments with various staff members. So we'll have one appointment with usually the congressperson, and then we'll have 2 other appointments with each of the senator's staff members. So the students get to present their statements 3 times to different groups. And so after all of that, we try to have a celebratory dinner. And we try to go to Old Town Alexandria and eat at Gadsby's Tavern. If we shift the schedule by a day and say like we start on a different day, Gadsby's Tavern won't be open. So that changes things. But we go to Gadsby's Tavern where George Washington frequented way back in the day. They get newspapers from the 1800s, and sometimes we get the pleasure of an 1800s reenactor who will talk with the students and try to entertain them. And finally, day 6 is our day to leave. We wake up, they clean the space that they've been living in, and we head out to the airport. Here is where we stay. So this is Shalom Place, as I mentioned before. You will note that there are stairs here, and so we will work to make this accessible. If we have accessibility needs and we have wheelchair users, there is a hotel right next door. Of course, we want students to be able to all work together, so there are lots of options, and we will figure out how to make this accommodating for everyone involved. But this is our standard accommodation. And so this is the whole building. There are bunk beds. Students bring linens, blankets, and linens to sleep on. And here is our eating space. So they'll have breakfast here daily. And the chaperones stay here too. And the chaperones will have breakfast here daily. We all sort of gather for breakfast, and people make their own breakfasts and such. We'll have lunch out in the community, and usually we'll have dinner out in the community as well. One night we might have pizza back at Shalom Place, and we would do that right here. Here is one of the bathrooms. There are only 3 bathrooms. This is just toilets. The other 2 bathrooms have showers, and so we tend to make one a male shower, one a female shower. And so that's one of our biggest limitations on the number of people that we can take on this trip. And here's the accessible version. This is where we would be looking at staying if we needed to consider accessibility. And then along the same lines, walking. We walk a lot. And so we really try to emphasize people wear your comfy shoes. We're at the point now where even on dress up days and on Capitol Hill days, we still encourage students to plan to wear their comfy shoes. If they really want to change over to less comfortable shoes, fancier shoes, then we encourage them to bring those with in their bag. Excuse me. In their bag, and we encourage them to change over to those when they want to do that. So we walk 6 to 10 miles a day. We encourage people to prepare by being able to comfortably walk 2 miles a day, because we sort of spread that out. That 6 to 10 miles is spread out over the course of the entire day. So there are opportunities for rest and breaks, and we are encouraging water drinking all day long. And so our capacity, we have the capacity to add up to 9 trips in 2027. But some of the challenges that we have to work around in adding those trips include seasonal weather, especially groups from the South do not want to be in Washington, D.C. in January. It will be very cold. And then even into the summertime, it gets pretty miserably hot to do all of the outdoor stuff that we tend to do. I bring a sun umbrella. Even I think the latest that I've gone now is in June. And in June, I will bring a sun umbrella. We wear tons of sunblock, and I'll have a hat and sunglasses. And just try to stay safe and out of the sun so that I'm not burning up. So congressional calendars are a big factor as well. So we want to make sure that when we go to DC, your congressperson is going to be there. So we schedule with them, we plan to see them. So there are months of the year where no one is in DC. And so those months we would need to avoid. Um, and many groups want to go during spring break in March. And so that's challenging, right? Because there are only 4 different weeks in the month, and many groups want the same weeks. So we are offering a $200 per person discount if we can book by October 15th, if we can book a schedule or like choose some dates by then, just because that'll allow us more time to commit to airfare and things like that, which allow the price to come down. All right, we are on to simply the photo album here. And on the left, you've got a student outside the National Museum of African American Heritage and Culture. In the center, we've got students at the National Cathedral. And on the right, students at the Lincoln Memorial. And I'm going to open it up to questions now at the same time while I go through this photo album. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions you may have at this time. I do see we have something in the chat. Oh, I apologize. Has it been hard to hear the whole time?
That was when the video was on. This is
Gotcha.
Chris Vargas. One of the questions I have in terms of the topics, are those completely student centered, or there's like a group of topics that they can choose from, or how does that go from start to be
It's
to?
100% student generated.
Okay.
So we start with the entire group and we'll say to them, hey, what topics are you interested in? We'll put them all on a whiteboard and we go, so we get about 20 or 30 topics on there, or as many as the students choose to put up there. And then we go with the students and vote, item by item, which ones they want to vote for. And so each student gets like 3 votes. And so if a topic gets 0 votes, the topic disappears. And then eventually we narrow it down to those 3 topics. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. If nobody else has another question, I have a second one.
Sure.
The fundraising coming up with the money, I saw that it was for us and you, and how does that work?
Yeah. So basically, we try to find a local foundation or a local group that is interested in funding your trip. We have not added a new trip in a while. So the older trips that we've had for years tend to be funded by the same group, same foundation year after year. Um, so yeah, so it's going to be an adventure, finding the funding, but we are a 501(c)(3), so we can accept that funding. And we would probably be asking you, like, hey, who do you think might want to fund this trip? Are there, Rotary clubs that we should be talking to? Are there Kiwanis clubs? That sort of thing.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely, Chris. Thanks for the questions. So yeah, here you've got students making a snowman. I was so excited to teach students from Texas how to make a snow person. That was awesome. The Library of Congress building is the most amazing building I've ever seen in my life. Here we've got, this is me on the right with some subway architecture. The subway in DC is just so beautiful. And here are students reading this newspaper from the 1800s. And oh my gosh, the spiral staircase. Just the architecture is phenomenal. These students on the left here, oh, go ahead, Jay.
Uh, Good afternoon, Carolyn. I had a question about the statements that the students work on.
Sure.
Um, it was not clear, I mean that the audio is that needs to obviously to be replaced. But
Sorry.
what I'm wondering is, does each student create a 3-minute thing, or is this just a 3-minute thing for the gang? Because I remember listening to a group of students who had gone through, let's just say, a similar experience, and their 3-minute presentation was mind blowing. I mean, it was so impressive. And I would think it would be a great encouragement for funders to hear a little bit more fulsome statements and obviously a little bit more clear. But I was just wondering, is it 3 minutes per student or is it 3 minutes total and everybody takes 15 seconds or whatever?
Sure. Those are great questions and great feedback too, Jay. We hadn't thought of that in the past. So collectively, it's about 3 minutes. So we don't time it. We don't, but we might encourage them, hey, let's shorten it. Let's be a little briefer. Let's stick to the point. Um, we do encourage personal stories, because the stories of their personal experiences and why they're passionate about this topic are really important. And we know that that storytelling is a compelling argument. So the students all have to agree on the statement. So they craft this statement together.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we do, like, so then so one group will be working together of, like, say, 5 students. And then they have to present their fundamental points to the entire group. And then the entire group has to decide whether or not they all agree with the statement as well. So we want to help everyone remain true to themselves and encourage them to be true to themselves. If they don't agree with it, we need everybody on board because they're collectively presenting it. However, we also make clear to them that they are able to say they don't agree. Like that's completely on the table, right? And if it's okay to say that we agree on nothing, but that we all disagree. And these are all the different ideas that we want to share on those topics, right? So we try to make sure that every voice is heard and that everyone can get behind the statements that they are collectively presenting to their representatives.
Mhm. Um, just one other question that comes to mind is we all, well, some of us follow the news, and the news that's put out by the cable networks and others is um, is sometimes it's slanted, or or it isn't really news; it's more commentary. And so what I'm wondering, just as an aside, have you noticed that the feedback that the kids get from either the staffers or the representatives is different than what they would normally hear on the news? Because I know having talked to a lot of politicians over the years, I know that it isn't. It's not like there's a button that gets pushed and all of a sudden gas prices go up or down depending on the mood of the chief in charge. So I'm just wondering, do you feel that you get a more honest sort of answer to your questions than say you would on, say, Fox News or Global, or not Global, that's Canadian, but
Yeah.
CNN, for instance?
Yeah, certainly. So some of this is why we get the briefings, right? Because we want them to have that complete perspective before they craft their statements and choose their side of the situation. Um, you know, Honestly, the way that students are getting their news these days, a lot of it's TikTok. So that is where they're getting their news. They're not watching television, a lot of them. Um,
Yeah.
I I feel like we should probably poll the students and start learning more about that. But a lot of, like, my family at my house, we don't have cable TV. So, and I realize that a lot of other people are living with streaming services as well. So, but TikTok seems to be the primary source of news for students this age group.
And is it different, the information that they get on TikTok, is that different than what you get right out of the horse's mouth, so to speak?
Yes, I would say so. Certainly, certainly. Um, what they're getting from the briefers is absolute facts. And gosh, some of these briefings are so incredible. It's mind blowing, and I so appreciate the briefers. Do this for us usually pro bono,
Mm.
and so it's fantastic. They get a really well-rounded perspective pretty quickly. However, we work with the students further after that briefing to pursue, hey, what bills in progress right now that we want our representatives to support or not support. What type of bill do we want our representative to be pushing? So I see Jalissa says in the chat, the TikTok algorithm is sometimes worse than a news network. Totally. Yes.
Oh,
Yes. And
geez.
this is why digital literacy is so important to teach, she says. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely, Jalissa. Um, I'm happy to open up to more questions too, if anyone else has anything, and I'll keep um, going through the photos. We might be nearly done. But yes, our more pictures of the architecture in DC and the subways, a celebratory dinner on the left, and more sleeping students. Okay, and Greg asks, could we schedule a trip like this in December? A trip this December, or do we need to look at 2027? I I'm a make things happen kind of person, Greg. And if it's possible, I would totally work to do it. The challenge, I'm not sure if you're thinking like during uh the holidays, but if you are, I'm thinking our representatives aren't going to be in DC then. Um, and so I do think that December, temperature wise, is a little better than January, probably in DC. It's probably colder in January. But if we could make it happen, I would make it happen, Greg. And so I need to look at the congressional calendar. I think that, toward the end of the month, Congress people are going to be away back in their districts. So maybe in the first couple weeks of December, it would be possible. Does that help with your question, Greg, or more thoughts?
I have looked at the um, calendar, and they're there the first like 3 weeks of December.
Yeah, I'm totally happy to try and make that work. Certainly. The real thing with your group would be getting the funding lined up by then. I can pretty much plan a trip like this in about 3 months' time is the time I need for actual planning. And that really gives us the opportunity to get the students to choose their topics. That one orientation meeting is important so that I can get those topics and then begin lining up the briefers. And but then the funding is the other thing. So if we can find a funder, that's the one big concern for doing it by December, but I think it's possible. More sleeping students on the metro. Here, students are talking with a staffer. And really, we try to get them to talk with the staffers so that they can learn what the staffers do and learn about who they are, how they ended up with this job, where they got started, what their background is in, because a wide variety of people end up working on Capitol Hill, and it's not all what you would expect. They're not all like political science majors. Um, they have different strengths and different backgrounds. Here are the students excited to have their Metro cards. And that sort of wraps up our presentation. Yes, Jay.
One more question. Do all of your students come from Texas, or or is that kind of what you're used to, is dealing with the Texas legislature or the representatives from Texas? Or if somebody wanted to go from Connecticut, for instance, would they then you'd set that up to meet with the Connecticut representatives? Is that how that would
Absolutely.
work?
Yes. We would get them to meet with their representatives because that's who they want to meet with, because that's who they can impact. So right now, we're mostly in Texas because our co-founders are from Texas.
Right.
And I live in Illinois. And so I am trying to grow this program here as well. I'm working on getting groups here to go. I have noticed that it's less attractive. It's a less attractive idea to East Coast schools, right? Because physically they're so much closer to DC. People might take the train to DC on their own or go with their families or that sort of thing. So I think like being in the Midwest and farther west in the country makes it a more attractive idea.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. That was a nice presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks all for being here. Let me see if I've got anything else here for you. Oh, just an inspiring quote. We have a choice about how we behave, and that means we have a choice to opt for civility and grace. So, yeah, I would be eager to make a trip happen, Greg, in December. Honestly, that balances the schedule so much easier than trying to push for March. So, let me know what you guys think. Let me know, any more questions. Stick around and ask or try to answer them for you. Okay, well, thank you all so much for being here. And I am easily accessible. I think I emailed you all directly, inviting you to come to this meeting. So feel free to reach out with any questions. This is not exclusive to social studies teachers. Chaperones can be anyone. But I, targeted the social studies teachers because I thought you guys would be more interested. I think one of you is an art teacher. And so I shared with the teaching staff that I thought would be most interested and engaged. And I just love the arts in DC. So I get really excited about that as well. But thank you all so much for coming. I'm going to end the recording now. And if we want to answer questions off the record, I will be here.